Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from.
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
We struggled as a strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
A very good morning to you. Thank you everyone for joining us here on Global Television or live in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I'm Mofwegwe bringing you Global Morning. It's a Friday, a big one, that's very promising. I just say that's a great weekend. It begins on a Friday. We want to believe yours is off to a great start. We have two big conversations in front of us this morning. The first will focus on the tax drive of the government of President Bola Tinubu, especially as it has to do with the $1 trillion economy, which is the ultimate goal for this government. In the middle of it, we've seen several efforts around the drive to bring in foreign direct investments into the country. Of course, that has informed several trips that the president has made in the last couple of months. But when you bring it back home, we're now having controversies around the discussion about tax waivers and concessions and so on and so forth. Of course, the government a few days ago had formally announced that it was giving concession to certain kinds of businesses, saying that it's part of the government's objective to ensuring that the country continues to be able to fund critical projects and then, of course, gets back to the path of growth. But again, that has its own challenges, which will form the crux of our discussion on the program this morning. We also want to take a look at something that happened on Wednesday, just 2 days ago. The PDP, the NNPP, and 5 other political parties coming together to form what some persons now say, if all goes well, will become a merger. But recall that in 2014, some people would say, well, it actually started in 2013. We also had seen what became an amalgamation of several political parties at that time, spearheaded by the Action Congress of Nigeria, the ACN, as we then knew it. And then it also brought in other political parties, including former President Muhammadu Buhari's CPC, the ANPP, and several other parties under it. Of course, the AD as well. And today, that has become the All Progressives Congress, APC. So 10 years, 1 decade down the line, it has become the ruling party in Nigeria. So the question is, are we having that again on the horizon? Because there have been these talks about Nigeria fast becoming a one-party country. Is there any truth in that? In any case, is this simply a matter of desperation to, as politicians often say, recapture power from the ruling All Progressives Congress, or is it an altruistic, genuine, sincere, nationalistic, patriotic move to drive a country into progress, into the path of growth and development in ways that are remarkable? My guests on the program this morning, both of them, will help us find sense in this narrative. But don't forget, we also have paper review up ahead for you, where we get to look at big stories and then put you ahead of the news as you get into this promising Friday. We'll take a quick break now. When we return, we will look at papers for you. We understand that the government is making so much of effort to industrialize Nigeria, especially when you look at what manufacturing sector has been like in several years. As it stands today, Nigeria is not a country that can boast of being viable, economically viable, especially where manufacturing is concerned. It's one challenge after another. If it's not problems around access to foreign exchange, it is issues around ease of doing business, particularly as it has to do with basic infrastructure, like power, for example, like access roads. And then, of course, you have bottlenecks around regulatory frameworks, around policies, and so on and so forth. What makes it difficult? Some people would probably say impossible for government to drive manufacturing in such a way that we can, going forward, depend far less on monies realized from the sale of crude oil. In this special report that focuses on Nigeria's largest steel mill, that is the Ajaokuta steel industry, our correspondent, Sharon Ajay, takes a look at what the President Tinubu-led government now says it has done and will do further with regards to that very critical investment.
A cross-section of Nigerians has reacted to the announcement by the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Prince Shaibu Audu, assuring of the federal government's commitment to complete the Ajaokuta steel construction project, which is said to have the potential of creating 500,000 jobs for Nigerians. Nigerians have aired their views concerning the issue of the ongoing Ajaokuta steel construction project.
Helps us to get them.
For a steel complex that has been comatose for decades, many Nigerians are full of expectations, and it serves as a test of government's resolve. However, Edward, for instance, does not find the story particularly inspiring.
We've heard so much about Ajaokuta steel, and it's like at a point we're beginning to lose hope. But because hope is the essence of life, we believe that this government, or whatever successive government, should do something about it, because Nigeria needs it. And Nigeria is more important than anybody. So we are believing that because of humanity, we need it. We can't continue to be stagnant. We need to move forward.
Robert, on the other hand, expresses optimism and advises Nigerians to keep hope alive while constantly believing in and supporting the government.
The time has come for us to actually believe in the words of Mr. President. You understand, he's a pragmatic person. He's focused, and he has direction. And he has armed himself with technocrats. And I believe so much in the words of the Honorable Minister, who is a representative of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And also, you have a permanent secretary, you understand, in that ministry that is a technocrat. And I believe that they will swing into action very soon.
For Wasil Awar, a civil servant, more commitment to the Ajaokuta steel complex is expected of the government, considering the need to industrialize Nigeria in order to encourage local production.
We have the natural deposit of this steel in Nigeria, so it cannot just be wasted, it cannot be moribund. If the other subsequent previous administration have been coming, they are making leaps emphasis on it. But I think he is more pragmatic on it, as he laid emphasis on it now. But you have to realize that the Ajaokuta steel is not going to start from embryo. It has gotten to a stage before it was moribund. So now what he's going to do now is to resuscitate it. So by resuscitating it, all the manpower needed, the capacity and capability needed, he knows them. Just to ask them to come back. And once it is top on his agenda, so if it's top of on his agenda, it's going to lay emphasis on it, and the thing will be prosecuted.
Sharon Ajay reporting for Global TV News.
Let's turn to the papers for you real quick. We begin with this day newspaper. This morning on the show, an interesting headline just right above the nameplate of this day says, finally, Dangote refinery sets for production gas first 1 million barrels crude oil feedstock. Recall that this refinery was supposed to kick into gear sometime in July, but that never happened. But it's a good thing to know that 5 months down the line, we're hearing now that it has gotten its first 1 million barrels of crude oil feedstock. Lekki is a bit agog this morning, especially when you look at the press presence there, reporters live on the ground following the development. Okay, but let's see a few other headlines for you. Still on the front page of this day. Afreximbank's president Orama emerges Forbes Africa's 2023 Person of the Year. And then beneath the nameplate 2027, PDP, NNPP, SDP, 4 others in coalition talks. That's actually the centrality of one of our conversations this morning on the show. Showing compassion, Shettima leads FG's delegation to visit Kaduna bomb victims, promises rebuilding. U.S. seeks responsible deployment of artificial intelligence. DHQ says 81 dead, 71 injured, receiving treatment. And then the big story on the front page of this day reads, Tinubu, every commitment to clear FX backlog will be fulfilled. This story comes with about 5 riders. The first one says, Sanusi says president shouldn't be petroleum minister, insists NNPC must account for dollar inflows. Opposes removal of AMCON levy, declares banking sector regulation a necessity. Chike Obi, era of regulations without consultation should end. Cardoso, regulation key to sound financial system, reduction of operational excesses. All right, those are the stories coming your way this morning from this day. But then we'll flip over to bring you headlines as well from the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Let's begin with the big one. The star story here reads, Kaduna drone strike, the guilty will be punished, Tinubu vows. Says Tundumbiri community to be rebuilt under Fulako initiative. DHQ's statements unnecessary, ACF says. The details of that story await you on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. Above the nameplates, top left corner, Dangote refinery receives first crude oil shipment from Agbami, set to commence production. Prisons spend 750 naira to feed inmates, 800 naira to feed dogs daily, Senate told. On page 27 of Nigerian Tribune, Comptroller General proposes 3,000 naira daily for inmates. Unending controversy over Kwara underpass. And then when you look at the right corner of the Tribune front page, Sanusi, president should not be petroleum minister. I was sacked for exposing corruption in NNPC, he says. Tributes pour in as Kokori dies on 80th birthday. Give our dad accolades he deserves for his sacrifice for Nigeria. That's his children. They're speaking. NJC recommends retirement of Osun High Court judge. Declines Adeleke's 11 request on CJ. Sets up panels to probe judicial officers. And then on page 11, you would find a headline that reads, alleged failed abduction, file contempt proceedings against the FCC DSS if Reps Committee tells Amefele's lawyers. Adelabu to rejoin APC next week on page 11. Edo Forest's gunfire attacks, 3 NDLE operatives injured, 1 undergoes brain surgery. Okay, time to take a look at the Punch for you as well this morning. The Punch newspaper says just over the paper, the name plate of it, Sanusi Capes NNPCL doubts dollar remittance after subsidy removal. Ex-Emir entitled to his opinion, NNPCL remains focused, says spokesman. Some foreign airlines may quit Nigeria, IATA warns FG. What's the reason that may happen? Then, of course, you've got to read details for yourself on page 30 of the Punch newspaper. That story, by the way, has a picture of Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Kayamo. Kaduna bombing, FG vows to punish culprits. ACF demands GOC's removal. FG promises to unravel causes of bombing. Rebuild affected community, DHQ pleads. Curb accidental bombing with AI. U.S. Arms Center tells military. ACF demands probe. Tinubu, Nupeng orders mourn as Kokori dies at 80. I won't surrender my mandate to intimidation, Fubara. And then at the foot of the Punch, NJC sacks Oshun judge, dismisses Adeleke's petition against CJ. Gunmen abducts 10 Nasarawa varsity students. NPA blames concession for $853 million, 1.8 billion naira revenue shortfall. That story is on page 13 of the Punch newspaper. All right, and then we have The Guardian, where the big story on the front page of it says government's dithers as painful initiation to womanhood flourishes. That's on The Guardian newspaper this morning, the very front page of it. So that happens to be the Star story, by the way. And then it says, that's actually talking about female genital mutilation. It says government dithers as painful initiation to womanhood flourishes. A one-way local flight hits 200,000 naira ahead of festive travels. Okay, that's on business page 15 of The Guardian. Of course, for those who plan a couple of trips or even just a trip this festive season, you've got to be ready for it. But then you need to also prioritize because there's life after the Yuletide. All right, 10 Lafia varsity students kidnapped by gunmen. That story was also on the Punch newspaper. And then we have other headlines here. One that also says Tinubu, Oborivori, Gbagi, others mourn Kokori. That's Panya Labour president. Again, queues resurface at banks as customers battle cash scarcity. Okay, more pressure on industries, businesses, over 952 naira to the dollar exchange rate for imports. So it's becoming a bit more challenging for importers now, giving these rates of 952 naira to the greenback. Turns out our last paper on the show this morning is the Daily Trust, which has quite a number of stories. Let's begin with these headlines here on the Daily Trust newspaper. It says, excitement as to $20 billion Dangote refinery receives crude oil. We hear it has just gotten its first feedstock of 1 million barrels. Gunmen kidnap Nasarawa varsity students. Civil Defense yet to produce media trusts, radio tower, shields indicted operatives. Kaduna killings not a mistake, says Gumi. Army's attack against Air Force advice sources. What else? Officers grumble over lack of synergy between services. We have learned our lessons. Our operations remain joint. GHQ, Tinubu vows to punish anyone found culpable. More than 80% of Gaza's population displaced. That's a whole lot, but then it's making reference to the war between Israel and Hamas, which has had its toll basically on the Gaza area, where we understand that over 1 million people have lived up until this time. But now the sad news is, from the news report we're getting, that over 80% of the residents are now displaced. ASU kicks against inclusion of TED fund in annual budgets. Shiroro hydroelectric power dam under threats by bandits. That's GM. PDP backtracks from coalition with NNPP, SDP, others. Why, when, and how? Okay, we'll explore all of those elements for you in the course of the show this morning. In the meantime, though, that's a wrap on the paper review. Okay, so we're going to look at a few other issues for you in the course of our discussions this morning. But first, next up will be our focus on tax waivers.